I now call on the Councillor Milton Dick, Leader of the BCC Opposition.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, delegates. Can I too acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past and present. I want to acknowledge Brisbane City Councillors that are here today, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Helen Abrahams, and Councillor Kim Flesser, the Councillor for Northgate Ward. Delegates, it's been almost a year since I was last speaking to our great party, and a lot's happened in that past years. My good friend and the State Leader of the Opposition, Anastasia Palaszczuk, has continued to lead Labor to victory in 2 successful by-elections, and more than ever, as we have heard this morning, more and more Queenslanders are turning to Labor to not only support Labor, but more importantly, join Labor. Delegates, while a lot has happened, Brisbane has stagnated. It's a byproduct of a Lord Mayor who has been in council for 30 years and this year delivered a budget that just plods along and, as we know, does the bare minimum for the ratepayers of this city. Graham Quirk likes to say it's business as usual, but I believe we were elected to City Hall to do more than simply plod along and go through the motions. We're there to inject some energy and vision and passion into Brisbane's future. The Lord Mayoralty is more than just an administrative job. It's a leadership role, and Graham Quirk is a man who follows his orders from his boss, Campbell Newman. We've seen it time and time again. The control and command exercised by Graham Quirk's political masters in George Street. While Quirk is busying himself saying yes to anything Campbell Newman wants, Labor councillors have been proactive, taking up the fight to the LNP on the issues. And I'm proud to report to conference on the work of the Labor team at City Hall. We've launched new campaigns to improve cyclist and motorist safety on Brisbane's streets by calling on the Council and the State Government to support our Share the Road initiatives. We've done what Graham Quirk and the LNP wouldn't. We went out and spoke to the people of Brisbane about the draft new city plan and about the parking mess right across our city. Experts and residents alike across the board have panned the new city plan. And I want to thank our federal colleagues Wayne Swan, Graham Perrott, state candidates Mark Bailey and Di Farmer, and also Dr Jim Chalmers for their support and interest in how city plan will affect Brisbane's residents. Local governments have the important job of assessing and approving the development that happens in our city. And it's our job to protect Brisbane's backyards and our outdoor lifestyle. And no one works harder than that than my Deputy Councillor Helen Abrahams. As Councillor for the Gabba Ward and the Opposition spokesman for neighbourhood planning and development assessment, she fights every day for the residents' rights and, more importantly, parkland to be a priority in this city. Helen doesn't just shy away from the issues, and she'll do anything to get her point across. Whether it's a 200-person protest on the side of the road about parkland or picketing the front of the Kurilpa master plan alongside Jackie Trad this week. She's a strong woman fighting for Labor values, a fair go for local residents, the environment and Brisbane's green space. Better than anyone, Helen knows that the city plan only works when council makes developers stick to it. Time and time again, we've seen the LNP hand out height relaxations, car parking ratio relaxations and parkland relaxations to big developers. The LNP's relaxed attitude to planning and development in this city saw a developer's dream city plan approved by the council. It ticked all of the developers' boxes. Increase densities in the suburbs that don't want them, fewer car parks in new developments, allowing residential development on flood-prone land and limiting the way local residents could have their say, while ignoring what the people of Brisbane wanted: more car parking in new developments to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, better protections for character and heritage suburbs, and a fair go for existing local residents so they are told about a development on their street before the bulldozers arise. Brisbane Labor also forced the LNP into a wide-ranging parking review. Let's face it, Brisbane City Council hasn't stopped growing in one area, and that's parking revenue. We've gone from being the lifestyle capital of Australia to the parking fine capital of Australia. The LNP's only solution for parking problems is to install new parking meters and to send out the parking inspectors to issue another fine, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This year, the council will rip off almost $50 million from motorists in parking fine and parking meter revenue. The fact that parking fines reap in more than parking meters proves that the current parking system simply doesn't work, and it shows that the LNP revenue-based approach to parking won't fly in Brisbane. I've long believed that parking in our city should be treated as a transport and planning issue, not an easy money maker. Motorists shouldn't need 20 minutes and a dictionary to understand confusing parking signs. I called for the debate in the council chamber on parking and notified council of my intention to move an official motion on behalf of the opposition that the Brisbane City Council would undertake a wide-ranging review, particularly in the availability of parking, parking requirements and new development, and a fresh look at the almost $50 million in revenue ripped from motorists each year. We then saw Graham Quirk in a panic slap together an announcement. The problem was he didn't tell the people on the parking task force that he was actually putting them on the task force. He didn't have a single resident on the group, and he didn't have any intention of going out and speaking to the people of Brisbane. In typical LNP fashion, if you wanted to have a say, you had to send them an email. Graham Quirk went so far to say that he didn't want to do town hall meetings or talk to people about parking because, quote, he was afraid they would yell at him. Well, I'm not afraid of debating the issues. And alongside my fellow Labor councillors, we've been travelling around Brisbane holding public parking forums. We've been to Wollongabba, West End, Hawthorn, Paddington and Nunda, and we're not done yet, with more parking hearings planned across the city, including New Farm. We want 2014 to be known as the year of parking reform and public transport. It follows on from 2013, the year that Graham Quirk, the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, shrugged off his responsibility to deliver affordable, frequent and reliable public transport. Last year, I predicted it was going to be a shocking year ahead for commuters, and unfortunately, delegates, I was right. We know from the March patronage figures, which show that commuter patronage is down by almost 2.83 million trips, and that the LNP have walked away from their election commitment to deliver 90 new buses. Whichever way you look at it, Brisbane is going backwards, and when it comes to public transport, there are fewer services and less buses on the road. The recent bus reviews and cuts to funding for public transport make it harder for people to get across Brisbane, not easier. Public transport in Brisbane has been under attack by the LNP and Graham Quirk, and they've been clearing the decks and making it an easy ride for Campbell Newman's privatisation agenda. Last year, the LNP Council cut $20 million for public transport in our city, including $4 million in secret cuts. This year, bus services were slashed in the early mornings and late at night, particularly hurting students and shift workers when they need those services most. Routes were entirely cut, and City Cats services and ferry services were thrown into turmoil. New World cities invest in public transport. They don't cut it. Every time someone gets on a bus, they are taking a car off the road. When we invest in bus services and ferry and City Cat services, we cut emissions and we cut congestion. The message from the people of Brisbane is clear. Keep your hands off our buses, Graham Quirk and Campbell Newman. Delegates, I'll be lending my support and every one of the Labor councillors in the council team to support the Rail, Tram and Bus Union anti-bus privatisation campaign. Contestability and ultimately privatisation means less buses, less often, less jobs and cuts to services right across our city. One area where the council always says yes to, delegates, is of course the dreaded city cycle scheme. And delegates, it's my sad duty to report to conference that this year we have ticked over a whopping $17 million on this disaster. The core principle of responsible and successful governments is the wide-ranging free exchange of ideas, something the LNP simply do not believe in. Hiding behind bureaucrats hiding behind email accounts and decisions behind closed doors doesn't wash with me or any party member in Queensland. We know that this council is the most secretive in Australia. I've taken a different style when dealing with policy development and have set out to meet as many residents across Brisbane as possible so they get to have their say and suggestions to me in person. Because no matter where you live or where you come from, elected officials must get out and listen to the people they seek to represent. A lesson Newman and Quirk would well do to learn. I want to hear what the ratepayers of the city and the party members want to say right across the city. I want to hear about your ideas for investing in public transport, fixing the LNP's debt mess, and what programs and services are, of course, critical for the growth of our city. So today I announce that Brisbane Labor councillors will be conducting a series of policy forums and listening forums right across the city. In the lead up to the 2016 election, it's critical that we engage with the ratepayers of this city. The LNP are lazy and they have given up when it comes to planning for our city. Brisbane City Council has real challenges and we need real leaders to fix the mess made by Newman, Nichols and Quirk. Year after year, the LNP administration does the same thing with our budget. They make headline-grabbing announcements and then spend the next 364 days of the year quietly whittling them away and cutting back services, like the $26.9 million they cut completely from the budget last year and the $43.5 million they simply rolled over into this year's budget. This year, Graham Quirk's big announcement was that he was going to reduce debt, but take a closer look and you'll see that this is nothing more than tricky accounting with a $400 million payment made by the former federal Labor government, a real government investing in public transport and infrastructure for our city and our country. Delegates, let me be clear. Debt has not reduced as a result of any action taken by Quirk, Julian Simmons or any member of the LNP. They like to lecture on debt, but they are the architects of the debt for Brisbane. In fact, it was Campbell Newman and Tim Nichols and Graham Quirk who has produced the largest single amount of debt that our city has ever faced in our city's history. Here are the facts that the current council owes. $853 million in general purpose borrowings, $250 million for the go-between bridge, $428 million for the Clem 7 tunnel, and $863 million for the latest disaster, the Legacy Way tunnel. Let's not have any more debt lectures from the LNP. Delegates, that is $2 billion worth of debt that we are paying off each and every week to the tune of around $2 million. They like to lecture, but they don't like the facts. In just the 40 minutes it took Graham Quirk to deliver his budget speech, Brisbane ratepayers racked up $10,714 in loan interest payments for the Lord Mayor's $2 billion debt. Even for a council the size of Brisbane, these debts have a crippling effect on council's ability to finance important services and the projects we should be delivering for our residents right across the suburbs. Debt is the biggest threat to this council's long-term financial sustainability, and the Lord Mayor wants to keep his head in the sand and just simply ignore it, while continuing to sign blank cheques for whatever Campbell Newman wants. 10 years ago, Newman delivered his first budget in the Brisbane City Council. He then came up with more broken promises that rates and charges for the mums and dads of Brisbane wouldn't increase higher than inflation. But no amount of spin or relocation of debt will overcome the simple truth that an average ratepayer paid $2,100 for rates, charges and water in 2004, and this year they'll pay $3,400 for exactly the same services. That's a simple 61% increase in cost to ratepayers. Any way you look at it, while Graham Quirk does his best to appease big business and developers, it's the ratepayers, the mums and dads and working people in our city that are left holding the bills. The LNP have done nothing to reduce the cost of living for Brisbane families and the people of Queensland. This is something we'll be sure to remind the people of Brisbane at the next council election in 2016. Until then, alongside my fellow Labor councillors, we'll continue to fight for parking reform, a universal public transport system, an accountable development assessment process, and an affordable rates program for our city. Delegates, we will be working alongside our hard-working state candidates every single day to make Campbell Newman a one-term government. We will then fight every single day to remove Graham Quirk and the LNP administration to deliver a Labor majority and a Labor Lord Mayor in 2016.